Hey guys, Varun Kirti here. In this video, we're going to talk about how to nail recruiter interviews, or also known as recruiter phone screens. For this is for IT and tech leaders. Let's crack right into it. So, in this guide, what we are going to learn is what is the goal of a recruiter level interview? What are they really looking to do there, right? Then, how can you prepare for these phone screens? Then we're going to go through a section where we talk about the typical questions that you can expect and how to prepare for them. What are some things that would make it much more likely for recruiter to consider you to the hiring manager round, pass along to the hiring manager round. And lastly, what are some of the cues that you can pick up that tells you that whether or not the recruiter likes you? So let's crack right into it. The first question that you're likely going to get, the goal of recruiter round. Let's just start here. Um, the goal of recruiter round is they're screening or assessing here whether or not you have an on paper fit, right? So they're assessing in terms of the key initiatives that you have led, the expertise that you have, the environment where you come from. It's a big company environment, small company environment. Was it a consulting environment? Was it a particular industry, right? Or the kind of skill set that you have. So this could be technical skills, leadership skills, so on and so forth, right? Then they're looking to align whether the salary expectations match, right? Are the both parties on the same page? Are you in the same location as they are? Sometimes because like what we write versus where we exactly are, those are different. So that's why they vet it. Or if it's a remote role, then that's out of the consideration. And then they want to educate you about the role, especially happens for leadership roles where there's recruiters pay a lot of attention in terms of like educating you about the position if they're like really attracting the right candidate. That's part of like a recruiter's job to attract the right candidate. And then they also want to learn about you so that they can present your case to the hiring manager. And this becomes like the centerpiece of our work of like what we do and what should we do in a recruiter round that would make a really good case for us, right? So as long as you could do a really good job at clearly articulating in lucid terms that to recruiter what is it that you do that aligns well with the role, so that they can then present your case to the hiring managers with just as much clarity, you are golden. And if we fail to do that, if we confuse the recruiter, then that becomes a problem. So that said, there are some things that you can do that will help you prepare ahead. So one thing, of course, in a recruiter round, do not go unprepared. Don't take it casually, right? Read through the job description thoroughly. And when I say thoroughly, I mean like understand what does the company do, what is the core charter of the role, like why are they hiring for this position, what is this person that they're hiring for is going to be doing in this role, the first key things with large strategy items that they're looking to drive. And then more specifically, what are some of the characteristics that they are looking for in the ideal person? These could be the skill set, this could be expertise, this could also be character traits, right? So just to have an awareness of like, hey, what is it that are they looking to buy? And then you can have a much more rich conversation from there. Then of course research the salary range, and I'll talk to you more about this later. And then most importantly, do not have like prepared canned cookie cutter responses. Like actually try to personalize that, because recruiters would look for that kind of things. So with that said, let's get started with the first question, and that's what they're going to ask is tell me about yourself. And your response should be concise, clear, and most importantly it should be relevant to the role, right? And keep it under a minute. Too much to ask, right? No, well, not quite. It's actually easy. So this structure works really well. Definitely have a structure in your response, so so you're not just like constantly talking through things and just like adding things after things, and like this it becomes such a long response. But also what we are going to do with this structure is we're going to invoke the right idea, so if the recruiter has follow-up questions they can ask, right? So the first thing we're going to talk about is of course who you are and what you have been doing lately. They're not looking to study your 25 years of history. Do not start from the beginning. Just talk about like, hey, lately in the last 4 or 5 years what have you been doing, or your most recent role, what you have been doing, because that's what they're most interested in, how you align with what they're doing. right? And then you want to highlight the relevant experience, not just any experience, the relevant experience and expertise that is being sought after in the new role, right? You want to add a little bit of a personal touch, a human touch to what you're saying, like about who you are, because that kind of humanizes the conversation. And then you want to tie it back to the role so you can again reinforce that and then kind of lead the discussion towards the role, right? So that's it. We're going to use the structure, and here's an example that I have, and it's actually quite. It takes very little time and it does the job, right? So we start with who and what. So my name's Varun. I'm a data and analytics leader with 15 years of experience in AI, machine learning, and predictive analytics in the fintech and retail space. Most recently, and this is where I'm talking about my recent experience, I've already given them like the overall rundown of like what I have been doing, right? So most recently, I was senior director of data science at Ally Financial, leading teams that built AI-driven analytics platform and optimized a $1 billion marketing budget, generating $124 million in incremental revenue. So what did I just do here? I talked about most recent role, the most important thing that I did. I didn't talk about 16 different things, right? And that's it. And probably it's also clear to you that like, hey, if I just hear that about a person, that gives me a lot of context, right? Then I'm talking about my relevant expertise. So I specialize in building and scaling data teams, developing cloud-based analytic platforms, and driving data literacy programs. Specifically, and this is where I'm further aligning with the role. Specifically, I have experience in pricing model, revenue forecasting, and customer analytics, which are central to the role. And these are, in fact, the things that are called out in the job description. So those are the things I would plug in. And then I'm just adding a personal touch. Hey, outside of work, I enjoy mentoring data science community and I like spending time outdoors with my family, and then I want to tie it back to the role. So I noticed that Ernest is in a very similar growth phase as Ally was a few years ago, and is currently deploying pricing model, and deploying pricing model is central to this role, something that I thrive and love doing. Right. So now you have tied it back to the role, like, hey, how you what you guys are doing are also something that I've already done, and I thrive in that environment. So that's why I'm very excited and would love to learn more. Why this helps works so well is it kind of gives you a lead into the conversation. So kind of like it shifts the frame from recruiter asking you questions and you just like giving them the answers to kind of making it more conversational. So this end just rounds it off really well. Hope that helps. I hope that makes sense. So then comes the next question: why do you want to join this company, right? And of course, the answer cannot be like, hey, because this is a great opportunity, because I like the role. You can't. I mean, there's got to be more to that, right? So it's gotta be something very specific to the role, which is, of course, the more believable thing. So, like, hey, there's something specific about the role that I like, and when I say call that out, it sounds more believable rather than some generic cookie cutter response that I say, right? Or you would be aligning with the mission of the company. Although these kind of responses, when you tie like, hey, that I really like the mission of the company, those come across like less believable. Hey, I always was passionate about connecting people with social media or this or that, and that's why I want to join Facebook. That is a very I personally don't believe when somebody says that unless like that is a really strong mission and there's a really strong story behind that. So depends on how you want to approach it, right? And believability will always come from specificity. So if you like connecting people with social media, then what happened in your life, that why like that you should be able to tie that to something specific. So let's look at an example here. So for here, I'm calling out the key objective of the role. So I see this role is focused on developing a scalable data strategy and optimizing pricing models and data-driven decision making across the organization, and that's exactly where I add value. So that is the specific part. That's exactly where I add value, and then I show alignment. Like, hey, I have led data teams. So you can already see like how this question, by the way, the answer to this question is already going in line with our introduction. So there would be some places where like this question gets asked and you might be find like, hey, I'm repeating similar kinds of things. That's okay, because repetition sometimes is good because it helps cement the right things. So went on a little tangent here. So here I'm showing the alignment that hey, I have been in these kind of environments. So that's high growth fintech environments, which is also for the target role. That's the same environment. And then I have been developing AI-driven pricing models and predictive analytics and scalable data infrastructures, right? I built these analytics platforms that did XYZ. Given your focus on pricing optimization and accessibility, I see a strong alignment, right? So I've already talked about the alignment with the role, right? So if it's specific, if this is what you guys do, I see a strong alignment, and that's why I went ahead and applied to this role. So that's one way to put it. The other alignment is through the mission of the company, and this is where I said like, hey, not all the time it would work. So that you can say I'm passionate about using data to improve financial well-being. Well, are you? Because it somebody may or may not believe that. Like it's not people's passion always to kind of like improve financial well-being with using data. It's to be honest, like I don't particularly like this kind of response, but people prefer to do that, so be it, right? And so that's the alignment with the company's mission. So but anyway, you got to show the alignment with the role specifically, not just like hey, I because it's a good role, you guys are paying well, right? There's an optional thing that you can do if you really connect with that domain, with that area, with that expert, like industry where you have been that industry expert as well. So you could say like, hey, you at the stage where you guys are at, beyond optimizing pricing models, I see a lot of opportunity in building like AI powered decision framework in this particular space, and that enables like you guys have a lot of lending going on, so you can enable real time lending adjustments based on market trends and customer behavior. That is something I have done. That is the kind of transformation I'd be excited to drive, and so that's why I'll be like, I'm considering this company. And that way, you can further nail it down more precisely, right? Tie it down more precisely. Now, a parallel of that question or an extension of that question is, okay, so why do you want to leave your current role? Again, this is generally a question that would catch a lot of people off guard, but to be honest, it's a fair question to ask, right? So here we are not going to, of course, badmouth our current company, right? uh, Neither are we going to give a vague answer where say like, oh yeah, I'm always looking to grow and that's why I applied. So it has to be it has to be something specific. Again, it has to be believable, right? So you want to keep it positive, you want to show that your work has reached a natural transition, and then you want to connect to the next role. So this connect to the next role is a consistent theme across like the three questions that we have seen thus far. So here what I'm doing is like, again, you can use the same example. So I'm talking about like, hey, how we started at this company. During that time I built and scaled company's first predictive analytics model to enable real-time customer insights, and here's the pivot, right? So while we successfully built these recommendation systems, and the focus has now shifted more towards optimization and maintenance, right? So while I'm enjoying refining the models, I'm most energized by building and scaling new initiatives. So that's my forte, right? So and that is that natural transition that I was talking about, right? So anymore, I mean, yeah, the work is good, but I don't like it. So that's why when I saw this role where you guys were building and scaling new initiatives, that caught my eye. So again, nothing bad has been said about the past company. Your role has reached a natural transition, and now you're, of course, wanting to go after something specific that you like, and that specificity is what you saw in this new role, and so that's why you are applying. So that solves the problem. And lastly, the most recruiter conversation, depending on which state it is happening, New York, California, etc., they release their salary data, so this might not be a question, but many other states they do not. So you might get this question: what are your salary expectations, right? And one very important thing to understand is recruiter is not looking to negotiate with you here. This is not a negotiation question, right? It's a qualification question, whether or not they have the buying power to afford you or not, right? That's just why they are asking. So uh, like if those expectations are not met, there's no point going through 8 rounds of interviews and then later finding out that this expectation is not met, and that's why they're asking at this stage. This is, again, it's not gonna be like the number you tell them, they're gonna hold you to it. So that said, what not to do here? So do not try to dodge the question by saying like, hey, I'm open to discussing the range, or what does this role offer. You counter them back with a question, right? Because like it makes you come across as indecisive, unprepared. Like big no for a recruiter. They don't want to go move forward with somebody who does not have an idea about what they're worth, and then later down the line they're going to create problems in terms of haggling, right? Or they're going to say like, oh, I don't, like, they are not they're not going to be aligned well with the role. Neither we are here to give any vague answer, right? So when you say like, hey, it depends on the role and package, it also creates uncertainty there. It creates unnecessary back and forth, right? It creates friction with the recruiter. And lastly, you don't want to lowball yourself just to get an interview. So for example, if you know that the roughly somewhere the for you, you will not accept any offer for a base pay lower than 250K, and so then do not say like, hey, if the role has an upper limit of 210K, don't just say 200K just so you can get to the next round of interviews, because again, that's gonna not go so well. So basically, ultimately, what I'm saying is, what you have to do here is give them a direct number. No dancing and no beating around the bush, no nothing. So if they say like, hey, what are your salary expectation? I'm looking for 220K and above, 250K and above. That's it. Give them a precise number. And how do you come up with that number? Well, if you have no data, if you haven't done research, then pick the lowest number that you would realistically accept, below which you wouldn't even consider signing any offer. And that is a good starting point, because this, again, this is not a negotiation conversation, this is just an alignment conversation, right? Now, if there's a public range available, so let's just, the role mentions that the base salary range is like 200K to 300K. Well, then a good starting point is aim for that 70% of that range. So you can say like, hey, I'm looking for something 270K and above, right? Still keeps you in the ballpark, still you haven't quoted very low. So there's that. Or you could do an independent research and choose a fair market value. Uh, there's many tools like levels.fyi for more of the high tech companies, Payscale, or like salary.com. Those are like for most general purpose companies, or like a general internet search would tell you a lot more. There are many channels like Blind, or often Reddit can be a good source. You can find that data. It's not so hard to get at least a ballpark. Um, Now, closing notes. What are some of the signs that a recruiter likes you? So, if they are talking more about the role with you, if they are taking, initiative in terms of educating you about the role, that's usually a really good sign, right? If they talk about next steps, hey, so yeah, the hiring manager is going to reach out to you on Monday, this and that, like that's a good sign, right? Or they start giving you context about more about hiring panel. So you're going to talk to this person, you're likely going to talk to that person, right? Without you asking, they give you more context, you share any more information, uh, then that's usually a good sign. Bad sign is whenever they say, oh yeah, thank you for your time, yes, we will let you know, we have more candidates that that we are considering. That's a big no no, because if they recruiters want to move fast. If they have decided on the candidate, they don't want them to know that like, hey, we are considering other candidates. They don't want to lose their top candidates. So if there's a verbiage that is coming across like, hey, we have more candidates that we are considering, or they're rushing through the questions like, yeah, tell me this, tell me that, right? The interview process is very uh, feel very accelerated, right? Or they tell you like, hey, like, yeah, we will get back to you in 2 weeks, some very far off date, then likely it's not going well, or it's not aligned, and that's okay. Like there's not much you can do. I mean, it's a recruiter round, all right? You probably are not a good fit, or they didn't like something that you said, so next time work on that. But that's pretty much it. Like those are not the good signs. So hope this was educational. I hope this was helpful. We'll be adding more videos around the interview process. So that's it. All the best.